This is day 7 of the June 96 10-day retreat in Springwater. Two things came up which may be good to go into together. One is effort. Either the question, do I need to make effort? Or is it ever possible to be freed from the compulsion of making an effort? And the other is faith or trust. Is there such a thing as faith in this work? Trusting? I don't know whether those two things are related. We'll see as the talk unfolds. Effort is always a retreat topic. First of all, we have all been so conditioned, so heavily programmed to make an effort, whether we want to or not. In most of our lives, maybe there are exceptions, but for most of us, effort was drilled into us with reward and punishment. Lots of praise and reward for making a good effort, trying hard, achieving. And the opposite, if there was no effort made, being put down or humiliated, punished with low grades or stern looks for not achieving what was expected of us. Also, none of us, maybe a few of us, but most of us did not grow up in an environment of lots of play and playing with things, investigating, finding out, leisurely. Who of us had parents of leisure? We had parents with lots of labor-saving devices, more so all the time, and less time to use for play and being at ease with each other. Nature more and more absent from the city canyons. The pollution, the cement, the noise, congestedness and absence of green hills and meadows and woods and deer. Which convey on their own an atmosphere of effortlessness, wholeness. Presence, eternal presence. So our whole orientation in time and space and thought is effort. And the body manifests it with a million tensions and stresses and wrinkles. I don't mean just the wrinkles of aging or sun exposure, but the wrinkles of I have to, I must, I shall, I shouldn't. That becomes more obvious in a retreat, doesn't it? So many people have mentioned it. A growing in touchness with a tense body that wants to get something or get someplace, be something, or discontented with itself for not being something. Not being without thought, not being quiet, not being enlightened. And the yearning for it, which manifests in its own appropriate stresses, tensions of get there, do something. Work hard. You may say, well, I'm not thinking of enlightenment anymore, but I'm thinking that I ought to be attentive. I got to be more attentive. I got to make an effort to be attentive. And it feels like that. I remember myself in the early years, it seemed I had never done harder work than trying to remain attentive, in that case with a koan. Koan was more strenuous. Attention seemed a big relaxed release to just be able to be there. But if one doesn't have a practice with a push to it and a pull, then this whole conditioning of the past goes into having to be attentive and working hard at it. Working hard at fighting the distractions or the thoughts, bringing the mind back to here and now, which all feels like so much effort. So much hard, arduous work. And people ask me all the time whether they come to retreats or come to hold an interview. But doesn't effort have to take place at least in the beginning? Didn't the effort of your past training come in handy now? All of this kind of trying to put a causal relationship between making effort and this presence of being here effortlessly, openly, unwrinkled. I don't really know about these cause and effect relationships of past effort to present, to presence now. I'm not sure whether there is or not. I do remember years and years back, before ever even beginning Zen training, I read a book by Evelyn Underhill on mysticism. And in there someplace, she or someone else writes, the mind needs to be concentrated, else it will never know itself. So start by looking at one thing and one thing alone. See what happens. So I sat down in front of our Diefenbachia at home. It was the greenest thing I could find. She hadn't said it has to be a green thing. And tried to look concentratedly at the tip of the leaf. And I think 2 minutes was a lot, if I was able to. Couldn't concentrate very long on the tip of that leaf because of a lot of self-consciousness, a lot of questions. Am I doing it right? Oh, the mind just full of self-doubting and wanting and fearing. And in the midst of all of that, trying to concentrate on a Dieffenbachia leaf. Soon after that, I came in touch with the 3 pillars and then joined the Zen Center, where, if I remember correctly, and memory is not to be trusted very much, as I said earlier, concentrating on a koan, keeping the koan in mind, was much harder than just being here. It seemed to be a constant invitation. And yet, who knows? I cannot make any conclusive statements about what in one's past has to do with the present. Actually, everything does and nothing. Everything, not just in one's personal past, but in the past of my parents, my peers, their parents, their peers, and on back to, one would think, more and more people, but ultimately it must be fewer and fewer people. But because if the record is correct, we started from very few groups of human beings. And back in evolution. Is that meaningful anymore? Or can one just let that past go, at least speculation about what in the past influences my present, and be with this presence, no matter how convoluted, how busy and self-conscious the mind may be. In the midst of that, begin to listen. Not just pay attention to the tip of one leaf or nose or word, but the whole thing, starting with what's closest. This body is the closest. The breathing is the most regular, even though it can be very irregular at times. Is it an effort to listen for whatever period of time the attention may be there to the breathing? Is it an effort right now? Right now, as we're here together quietly on a warm, dry, sunny morning, birds in the background, cool and warm air mixing. Is it an effort to listen to the crow breathing? It's there, isn't it? And we don't have to tell us, pay attention to it. Don't have to ask us, am I attentive to the breathing? But just let it be there. The attention is there on its own, without any willpower. Willpower makes it that much harder because it produces resistance. That's why all this effort making is so hard, so arduous and strenuous, because it is intertwined with so much resistance. I want to, but I can't. I want to, but I also would like to forget about the whole thing and take a walk. Take a walk and there'll be attention, whether one wants it or not, or involvement in thoughts, whether one wants it or not. involvement in emotions, and then maybe hearing the gushing of the creek over the rocks. For a moment, it's there. Attention may be there or not. And the breathing, the bird calling. So, the closest is this body with its sensitive receptors, sensitive organs, hearing, seeing, touching, feeling, tasting, smelling. All one wholeness of perception, this moment of attending effortlessly. And then the body in its stresses and strains. In the beginning, one doesn't notice it at all because we're so used to it. So used to a stressed out body. Tight, holding past memories of pleasure and pain and compulsions. The body holds it in the way it moves or doesn't move. But with quiet sitting, entering into silence, alone and together, things do pop into awareness. One knows not why or how, but it does. And in giving quiet attention, I know that word is not right, there's no one who's giving it. In attention revealing stresses, tightness, not trying to do something about it, not admonishing, relax. Just attention, just listening, feeling whatever there is under stress that one never used to notice, but now it is becoming evident. Maybe at one point or other, in this non-directive awareness, a stress wrinkle will smooth out on its own and may release sort of an internally held command, do or don't, be or don't, you must or mustn't. These little commands are held, as it were, in the wrinkles of the tensions of this body and sort of trickle out as meaningless baggage. And yet, trying to do this thing with effort, one can notice when the awareness is very sensitive, tender, and subtle. Trying to do this with an effort darkens or fogs over the awareness, because it immediately strengthens this whole I-me network of thoughts and remembrances. I have to do this, I must get there. This kind of effort immediately activates and reinforces the fog of me-ness. And therefore narrows the space which a moment ago may have been open and relaxed, with no injunctions, no commands, no I to want something or not to want something. And does thought say right now, well, what of the tensions that don't go? They come into awareness, but they don't go. Don't worry about it. Not to reinforce the perennial worrier, which is part of the pattern of this whole I complex. In this work of this moment, there's nothing to worry about. There's only to discover and see and listen openly without trying to interfere and change and get rid of or keep. I think somebody asked this morning, don't have a completely clear recollection. I'm always telling myself to remain with something, but might it be superfluous or unnecessary to try to remain with something? Watch it yourself. If this I have to remain with it again reinforces the sense of me and the duality that springs from it, the division, me and my task, me and my shortcomings, which I have to remain with, then there's not this incredibly healing, if you will, or holding presence of awareness that has no injunctions, remain with it or don't remain with it. It's with everything when it's there. And it's always there as this ego cycle abates or quiets down. Maybe most people after 6 or 7 days of quietness have had glimpses of that quieting down of the ego cycle, which is sort of just superimposed as a tight, opaque network on the openness of awareness. But every once in a while there is a glimpse, or maybe more than a glimpse, some period of unfettered and unefforted presence, unstrained, coming on its own. Maybe to one's great surprise. And then maybe a thought, how can I keep this, or can I remain with this? Will this get lost? That is the ego network kicking in, clouding over the bright sunshine. The sun isn't gone, it's there, but the clouds cover it up with their own dynamics, discharges, whatever else goes with cloudedness internally. So whether or not one needs to make an effort is up to each one of us, and what one means by making this effort. If the effort means to sit down quietly while one would like to read or write or do some kind of thing of relaxation, which usually involves thinking, or of course sports, running. Running is effort, isn't it? But we don't see it as such, because it feels good. It feels right at the right time to hike or walk or climb. And at times it feels right to go into quietness, solitude, and allow this humming, buzzing, straining and stressing organism to reveal itself to itself. So maybe this is a question for dialogue. Because different people may have different things to say about how it feels right now at this point in time with making effort. And what one really means by it. If it means allowing energy to gather in the presence of looking or listening, rather than the dissipation of energy into the 10,000 things that have some attraction and some momentum in their pull, to feel that pull, that momentum, and yet remain here with listening and looking, which includes the pull of the distractions, non-judgmentally, then it is rather a question of how the energies use themselves. Effort, as I understand the word or use it here, always has that ingredient of a me making that effort to attain something or get rid of something. And the resistance that goes with it, and the fears of losing or not attaining, failing, as well as the anticipation of succeeding. All a cloudy space which can be instantly lit up with attention, which doesn't mind it or object to it, it just irradiates it with presence. So coming now to the question of faith or trust, it does fit into this quite well. A person this morning said something like, I used to think that faith was in something which I realize now is projection, idea, fantasy, imagination. Traditional thoughts or concepts. And I can't do that anymore. I cannot manage that anymore. Having faith in something. The mind refuses. Cannot go with that anymore. And yet, is there such a thing as faith in, we have to say it negatively, don't we? No concept, no imagination, no traditional idea, projection, and yet faith or trust. And then the person added himself, that would be attention, wouldn't it? And this attention, this awareness, which is whole and undivided, before the split, is there for all of us. We are grounded in it. It is our original source, our original being, called by so many names, by so many mystics and traditions. And to many of us has revealed itself already in childhood, or one can remember days of very often connected with nature. Running through the fields or in the woods, a meadow of flowers, or a sunny sky, mountains, water, jumping on the rocks. An experience of infinite freedom in this here-ness and now-ness, in touchness with the whole environment. No threatening separation. Maybe earlier, even if one was fortunate enough to be nursed by a mother at the breast, that togetherness, that oneness, who knows? So, and of course, maybe later on this is overshadowed, avalanched over by all the schooling we get, all the having to achieve and get, and all the ego politics and antics learned very early by children, among each other and from the adults. And then maybe here and there, a little break in the clouds and instant sun flooding through, illuminating that live wholeness, which is our birthright. And then, of course, coming maybe out of this yearning, out of this faith, in that there is something beyond the divisiveness of our ego collective living. The yearning for wholeness, or faith in something beyond all the travails and tribulations of daily living, the pressures, the efforts, the anxieties. Some faith that this isn't all that there is to us and to this world and universe and relationship with each other. That maybe there is some original harmony and beginning to sit quietly, looking inwardly. Out of faith? This was the question. You could say, well, what are you talking about? That lends itself very easily to another conceptualization. Faith in the wholeness of everything. Faith in my original true nature. And there is the concept. Or is it beyond the concept that has been true for one, and one knows that it is so, even though it is overshadowed and clouded over? As something that will not be deterred. Because one knows, and I don't mean knowing in the sense of our acquired conceptual knowledge. There was an early question in a group meeting: is there a learning which is not accumulation of knowledge, of concepts, ideas, memories. I can say without any hesitation that there's total, complete trust in this awareness which takes care of everything. Does this now become instrumental in building up concepts for people? Or does it ring a bell, a resonance inside that is not conceptual, has its own energy? Of impelling to look and listen for oneself, quietly, silently, undeterred by whatever the obstacles may be. They are all material for looking and listening. That is an aspect of this faith or trust I'm talking about. Trusting that there cannot be any obstacle, no pain, no difficulty, that would be impossible to meet completely. Or putting it positively, anything that arises can be completely met. That is completely true and sure for myself. Whether it's always met or not is another question, whether one may withdraw or cringe. Notice then, with the dentist at first there was a cringing, which made it much worse. The moment that cringing was over, there was no problem. And to trust that this is possible for human beings, not just for one or two or few, for all of us. To meet completely, unconditionally, what's there, which is our conditioning. Listening to it, touching it, feeling it, being silent in its presence. No one there to resist or meddle or want it otherwise. These are just thoughts, conditioned thoughts, which can be detected by this awareness. Not judged, not condemned, but irradiated, seen, made transparent. That's what awareness does, if it does anything, makes things of the self, of the ego, of the conditioning, transparent, permeable. It's not a wall, impenetrable. It's like these beautiful cartoons, and before cartoons it was in stories. Alice in Wonderland, walking through walls. Because there is no such thing as solid barrier. It's all empty space. Verifiable by each one of us. Not just verifiable, we are empty space, even though the body feels fairly solid right now. Or does it? In sitting quietly, attending at times, where is the body? It's just one energy field of bird song and warmth and coolness and breathing and heart beating and traffic, whatever. till this moment. Where is the airplane, if that's what it was? Faintly, or just breathing and winding? Buzzing. And also none of it. We will end here for today.